Hello, and welcome to the Holistic Fitness Podcast, where you'll learn how to get your goals without burning out. I'm your host, Laurie, and this show isn't just about movement and nutrition. You probably already know that exercise and nutrition is important for your mental and physical health and well-being. It's also about stress management, mindset, shedding those limiting beliefs, and working through some of that childhood trauma while you're at it. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Marcella Raimondo, PhD and MPH. Marcella is a passionate and spirited clinical trainer speaking from her heart on social justice and eating disorders since 1995. She is on the About Face Board of Founders and a consultant. She was also on the advisory board for the Association of Size Health and Diversity, on the advisory board of Eating Disorder Recovery Support as past president, and served as co-chair of the Academy of Eating Disorder Diversity, Equity and Inclusion Committee. Marcella currently serves as a licensed clinical psychologist in Kaiser Permanente's Eating Disorder Clinic in Oakland and runs a private practice. Marcella herself has recovered from anorexia nervosa over 20 years ago. Marcella trains in Hand to Hand Self-Defense Center in Oakland. Her eating disorder recovery and martial arts training inspire her dedication to her multicultural body nurturance and community celebration. We spoke about diet culture, weight loss myths, and body liberation. If you know that you've had disordered relationships with eating or engage in restrictive dieting and then binge eating patterns, then you are going to want to tune into this one and learn so much from Marcella's expertise. How are you going today, Marcella?
I'm going great. We have a little reprieve from the rain here in Oakland, California. So it's sunny. Today's going to be a really nice day.
Oh, lucky you. We've got rain in Greenville, South Carolina, and it's actually St. Patrick's Day when we're recording this, even though I know it'll be released later on. But all of the St. Patrick Day events this evening have been cancelled because of the rain.
Oh, okay. Sorry, yeah. I'm sorry to hear.
That's all right. Only sorry for people going. Anyways, right. I'm extremely excited to have you on the podcast, Marcella. One, because as I was mentioning to you earlier, you are very educated, a doctor, in fact. So it's always nice to have folks that have studied this inside and out. But I also know you have a backstory, with regards to eating disorders and diet culture, weight loss myths, and, the work that you do, I'm just extremely excited about and passionate about myself. But usually when somebody goes this deep into this sort of work, there's a reason why. Can you share the context that listeners would need to know about your life to understand why you help people in the way you do today?
Oh, thank you for asking that Laurie. I really appreciate when people take all of who I am and really want to hear the lived experience. So I'm thank you. I really feel that. Yeah, and I'm finding myself getting even a little emotional right now. Because
that's okay. We've had tears here.
My work. Wow, it stems from my own battle and my own recovery from anorexia nervosa. That was almost a 10-year battle, mixed in with all kinds of disordered eating from the start and more towards the end. And why I am so passionate about this is because what I read about eating disorders, often in this, when I went to grad school, and hearing these mental health synopsises of eating disorders, it'd be this really small little paragraph of this really emaciated white woman, and really talking about control issues. And I'm wow, I'm not seeing a whole lot of compassion. And I'm actually seeing a lot of judgment towards this person. Nobody wants an eating disorder. And when folks tell me about their eating disorder, they tell me their lives and what has happened to them, and that an eating disorder makes sense. But there isn't this I must be in control. It is just I don't know what to do. My life and everything that happened to me, I had no agency in my life. And so an eating disorder makes sense. And then people talk intersectionally about who they are. And in terms of their ethnicity, their race, their gender, how they have navigated in society, and how an eating disorder interplays with that. So you could see there's a lot of complexity and a lot of nuance. And for myself, my mother immigrated here from Peru. My father's first generation Italian. My mother dealt with racism and assimilation by taking on what I call like an anti-fat lens. She was like, you must be thin. It's important for you to be thin. And not because she was being mean or cruel, but it was more like, I'm trying to protect you. And so I just grew up in that kind of mentality. And then Peruvian culture, Italian culture, you're celebrating food.
Yeah.
So I would just get a lot of mixed messages around, you have to eat all this food. This is important. Why, you're going to disrespect us if you don't, but you must remain thin. And as a 13-year-old, 14-year-old going through puberty where my body was changing, it was just a really chaotic time. And so the only thing that made sense to me was, well, then I'm going to retreat into myself and just not eat. That was the only way I felt like I could make sense of everything that was happening. And it was also the only way I felt like this is the only way I could manage my feelings. So that's what I just shrank, like figuratively and quite literally. And it wasn't until I began to read other testimonials of women of color with eating disorders that I began to see like, oh, my story makes sense. They were talking about culture. They were talking about racism. They were talking about their intersectional identities and how that interplayed with their eating disorder. And I felt like, oh my God, that story that was in my head, I'm like, no, other people are experiencing it. Like, I'm not alone here. And we often hear that phrase, like, I'm not alone. And it sounds kind of cliche, but when you're in it and you realize you're not alone, it's incredible. So I had a lot of resources to be able to go through recovery. And when I recovered, like the food and body liberation that I experienced, like for me to come into the totality of who I am, like completely as a person, was amazing. And it was, I'm trying to find the words of like, it was our human right to come into that degree of recovery. Like how I felt very blessed. And then I also felt like, but we have a right to be who we are. We have a right to hold our truths. We have a right to step into 100% of whom we are. In my recovery, I did that. And so when I'm seeing that people are struggling with that and not being able to step into that because of how our society regards eating disorders and weight, it really devastates me. And I will believe it enrages me as well, because I'm like, why aren't we supporting people to step into whom they are? People want a great relationship with food and their bodies. And people want, wherever they are in terms of their abilities, want movement in their lives, and want joyous movement, and want to connect with others, and want to enjoy food. And the fact that we have so many messages around food, and we have access issues when it comes to food as well, and how we regard movement as this almost like punishment, as opposed to our bodies like movement. And to feel like, whether it's dance or swim, I mean, just that kind of physical connection with ourselves and each other. And diet culture turns it into this really punishing regimen. And it's like, no, that's not what this is about, or what it should be about. And so I work with folks with full-blown eating disorders who are really struggling and who are medically in a dangerous place. Yes, I work with folks. And I also work with folks in running a body image group who are well, but you hear this relationship with food and their bodies, and hanging on to weight loss goals, and like, okay, how are we going to shift that because your body's going to do what your body's going to do. And folks realizing, like, I have been chasing weight loss goals my entire life and I'm miserable.
Mm.
And so it's also like, how are we going to let some of these weight loss goals go? Because like with some folks, it's hearing like, well, I'm eating nourishing foods. I'm eating and I'm enjoying eating. I'm spending time with my family. I'm doing movement, and I'm like, that's great. And folks, I'm more flexible. Like I don't get out of breath as easy the way I do. I cook. And then some folks say, but I haven't lost weight. I'm like, but you've just shared so many positive things.
Yeah.
And sometimes they question themselves like, wow, I'm really hanging on to the weight loss because I just listed 10 wonderful changes in my life. And I tell them it's not your fault. It's not your fault at all. You're doing all these changes. But we have a diet culture that says like, but if your body doesn't change, you're not doing this right. Or nothing matters.
Exactly. I'm so sorry that you had to go through a 10-year battle with anorexia nervosa. I can't imagine the pain that you went through, also being from two different cultures and receiving those mixed messages at such a young age. That must have been terribly like confusing and challenging, but you're clearly helping people in such a profound way now, and able to use that experience to support people to not make those same mistakes, but like to move themselves out of that quicker. You had a 10-year battle with it. And I want to move back to like the no compassion and judgment, like how there was a lot of judgment from others. Like it's a control thing. They need to be in control. Like looking from the outside in, it's really easy to judge. And I'd say that's the same with a lot of mental health problems. Like, if you're depressed, you know how hard it is to get out of the bed every single morning and how hard and heavy life is. But on the outside looking in, you might go, oh, that person's just lazy. So can you describe more about the lack of compassion we have towards people with eating disorders and how you think that the whole landscape needs to change?
That's a great question, Lori. So many folks in this field, when I say this field, I mean the field of eating disorders, will share that this field is still in its infancy. Like we are still not understanding. We're still not getting it. Let's see. When I say we're not getting it, we're not understanding. Like there's so many ways it's tied to like that kind of people with eating disorders are just control freaks. They just don't want to gain weight. I'm like, okay, not to say like there's not some truth in that. Yet, I think one of the best ways to dismantle judgment is curiosity, and how we need to be so curious, especially not just with eating disorders, but with mental health. I mean, I also work with folks with depression and anxiety, and I could feel my kind of capitalist judgment when I remember working with someone with the most debilitating depression I have ever worked with. And I could feel like, just get out of bed, just take a shower, and I could just feel that pounding in me as I was sitting with her. And she looked at me with this despair, like she was, if I could, I would. She was, I am watching my life. And she was, it is so hard for me to watch my life like this. And I was just, feeling that. And so the same thing with eating disorders. I mean, folks, share with me of like, I don't know what else to do. And there's also a lot of sentiment too about people with eating disorders don't really recover. And so when we have all these kind of viewpoints, like they're control freaks who don't really recover, you can see like there's almost the next line of thinking is like, well, then why do we care? Why should we put resources into it? This is kind of a dead end, condition. And what's also hard, or is that like many other mental health, illnesses, like it does require resources. Yeah, it does. It does require folks to be in intensive care because we are dismantling everything. Like an eating disorder, like we are saying, like, I need to hear everything and dismantle everything. We need to pretty much break apart the way you eat, and we need to reteach and relearn your relationship with food and your body. That takes time, and that takes a lot of resources. And what is hard about current eating disorder treatment is that it's very costly, so folks can't afford it. It also, folks have to take time off from work or school, and so trying to manage insurance and one's current lives and their obligations, also a challenge. There's also a lot in the field about we must refeed folks, because the thinking is like they have starved brains. Like what's the point of doing treatment on a malnourished brain? Let's just get that brain refed. Okay, there is some degree of truth in that, and I have worked with folks and I say, like, let's work on a plan to get you to eat a little bit more. And I've seen more engagement as the eating gets more resumed. But not to say like where someone is at, they're not there and competent in telling you, I have an eating disorder story that needs to be shared with you wherever they are at. And so how are we going to like listen to that story? Also, we just, a lot of early treatment on eating disorders was done on very privileged people. And for a lot of folks, they were in very emaciated bodies. So to refeed, they just went from emaciated bodies to a thin body. Life was still pretty grand for them. And actually, as a thin body, they got even like praise, and even, they were still able to navigate the world in a thin body. I have worked with folks who have told me, like, if I get renourished and my body changes, it gets bigger, or I get misgendered, or folks have to, like, my folks will see me as a bigger person of color than where I am now. Like, being bigger is actually going to cost me, and it can be kind of dangerous. And so folks have shared, like, I'm a little reluctant to do some of this treatment, not because I don't want to gain weight, and it's not a shallow thing. And so there's it's taken a lot of reworking in our eating disorder field to note, like, the weight and a body symbolizes so much, and it's not this one-dimensional shallow aspect. And when folks regain weight, to look at the consequences on a diet culture that is not accepting of that. So there's more work from some really great activists and really great clinicians about, like, we need to go a little bit slower. We need to really bring in a lot more like emotional therapy, we there's a lot of work on like when folks are so caught in this crossfire about like, I don't know what to do. Like, I don't want my eating disorder, but recovery and society is not supporting my recovery. And we're like, okay, let's acknowledge that. And then I think like we have to go deeper then. Like, what are your values? What's important to you? Because your values are where you're going to have to anchor time and time again. Because of our diet culture that is so relentless in what it says about food and bodies. So the field needs to hear from more lived experience folks.
Yeah.
Needs to hear from more folks who don't meet this stereotype of who gets an eating disorder. So we're looking at older folks, we're looking at people of color, we're looking at men, we're looking at trans folks, queer folks, folks with disabilities, folks in large bodies, fat folks, and who we just assume don't have eating disorders. And in fact, they have a lot of eating disorders, and I will say, and not just binge eating. Often when I'm seeing folks like, oh, they have binge eating, I'm like, no. What this person is telling me, like they have anorexia or they have bulimia nervosa, like they are in a full-blown medically red flag eating disorder. And we need to hear from folks more and more about their lived experience with eating disorders and what they can teach us about this field.
Are you tired of constantly feeling burnt out while trying to achieve your goals? Do you find yourself struggling to maintain motivation and productivity over long periods of time? I'd like to introduce you to the Goal Getting Journal, the ultimate solution for those of you who want to surpass their goals without burning out. Our journal is designed to help you set achievable goals, track your progress, and maintain a healthy work-life balance. With our journal, you'll discover practical strategies for managing stress, staying motivated, and avoiding burnout, including time blocking, habit stacking, and so much more. You'll also learn how to prioritize your tasks and maximize your productivity so you can get more done in less time. The Goal Getting Journal is perfect for anyone who wants to achieve their goals without sacrificing their mental health and well-being. Whether you're an entrepreneur, a student, or just someone who wants to make any positive change in your life, the Goal Getting Journal can help you stay on track and avoid burnout. And for Holistic Fitness podcast listeners, you can get 20% off your first journal using the code HF podcast. Go to goalgettingjournal.com and type HF podcast at checkout to get your discount. So what are you waiting for? Order the Goal Getting Journal today and start getting your goals without burning out.
It sounds like what you're bringing to this field really is, we talk about holistic fitness here, where we bring in the emotional side to fitness and nutrition, but you're really doing that with eating disorders in terms of the impact that one's culture can have on an eating disorder, or, how we can't judge somebody just from the outset because they look a different way, that, we completely discount them from having a disorder. And it sounds like you're really teaching people and providing some more holistic resources to support recovery. Something you mentioned that you said that you had a lot of resources when you went through recovery and you felt very blessed, but you also had a 10-year battle with anorexia nervosa. And I know that you're having a lot of conversations and you're supporting people with their disordered eating patterns and eating disorders. Can you provide some specific examples of resources that support people when they go through their recovery? Like if someone was listening right now thinking that they might have a problem, of course, go get the medical attention you deserve. But do you have any like tangible things, just like really help people out?
Like if someone were listening right now, there are a couple of websites, Project Heal and Equip, doing some online work with eating disorders, and to call Equip because they actually provide treatment online, and you can get an assessment. You can actually talk to someone and seeing where you are at. So that's like a very practical step. But where someone might be like listening and being like, I'm kind of scared to do this.
Yeah.
And so I want to acknowledge, like, it is scary. I hear you on feeling like I've got everything to lose giving up my eating disorder. And I want to say, like, yeah, that's real. That is absolutely real. So I'm not going to deny or minimize that in any way. I am just hoping that you can do some kind of self-reflective work of saying, I would like to be more than my eating disorder. And I'm going to say, you absolutely deserve that. Absolutely 1000% deserve to be more than your eating disorder. Is your eating disorder protecting you and functioning on some, and helping you function on some level? Absolutely. And perhaps in many ways, your eating disorder is helping you survive something you probably couldn't. And thank you for your eating disorder for that. And it would be good to let go of that, or perhaps even repurpose your eating disorder so that you find other ways to cope in your life, and you find other ways to be in your life that doesn't involve something as harmful as an eating disorder. And so I, want to say that. I also want to say, like, be gentle on yourself. Like, one day you'll feel like recovering, the next day you're like, I can't. And that's part of the process as well. And so there is nothing linear about recovery, and being gentle and compassionate and forgiving of yourself is absolutely important in this process. And you deserve to recover. You deserve to be 100% your who you are. Absolutely. And so, and if you are, all this sounds scary, like, do the values work. Like, what is important to you values wise? And some folks are like, well, I don't know. I have nothing. I'm like, think of anything in your life that is important to you. Think of how you want to show up for folks. That is important to you. Sometimes, or think about what's in your life right now. And folks have said, like, my pets are important to me. I'm like, great. Absolutely. So anything that is important to you right now, and thinking about, like, how you want to show up for yourself and others and society. And it's a lifelong journey to do that, like moving past your eating disorder and then just that continual work. And so it's not overnight. And it is such a process.
Yeah. And I think that values work is so important, whether it's an eating disorder, whether it's a habit you're looking to change in general. And it's something that we're not taught. And I find that with values, it's hard to discern what's your value versus what's an inherited value, because somebody might sit there and say, oh, I really enjoy, like, really nice, luxurious things. And it's like, is your value wealth from your family, or is your value wealth from yourself? Right. And for me, I was like 24 or 25, or maybe I was 23, but it was towards my mid-20s when I actually learned about, like, learning what my values were. And it was in cognitive behavioral therapy. And it just blew my mind, because then everything, I actually had the privilege of the therapist working through these to kind of get to my values. How have you helped people, like, really understand their values? Because with diet culture, that could be driving a disordered eating pattern, So right. How do you help people, like, understand their values and then, like, change behaviors off the back of that?
That's a great question. Because it's not just folks with eating disorders, even folks coming in who are just in a diet mindset, and are just so like, I can only be happy if I lose weight. And so many times that values work takes time. Like folks might start off saying, well, it is important for me to lose weight. That is a value of mine. And at times it's coming back to that over and over again. Many times it's asking, like, where did that value come from? And they'll hear like all kinds of stories, and they'll share, and then there's and then I'll ask like when was the last time you felt just free in your body? And they'll share like, childhood stories where they remark like, I wasn't thinking about anything when it came to like my body and food. And for some folks, for many folks, like that, the last time they felt that liberated and free was at a really young age. And so there's often this time like, so your things shifted when you were really young. So it means like what you've learned, it's kind of just really rooted and cemented. And there's a lot of work, and there's a particular activist. Her name is Sonia Renee Taylor, and she wrote the book "The Body Is Not an Apology," and I use that book constantly. She talks about like those things that you're saying to yourself. That's not your voice.
Yeah,
your authentic voice is a much different voice. We just have to find it. But your authentic voice is actually quite loving. And so when folks are, when we're looking at like, let's say someone says like weight loss is my value, like at times, like asking like, are you happy with that? And folks will share. I've yet to meet someone who's like, yeah, I am completely happy. I've done it. And here I am happy. I have yet to meet someone who has said like, I am much happier now that I have lost weight. I will meet folks that have like particularly when their weight fluctuates, have said like, society is more receptive of me at a lower weight. I'm like, well, that's very different. And noting like, and when my weight shifts, there are shifts in how receptive society is to me. And so them noting that, like, as I'm navigating through different weights. And folks who are like, who have a value of weight loss, excuse me, asking like, so then what is your life like? And for them to share, like, there is this constant in my head about what I'm eating, what I'm not eating, and using a language of like, I have to earn my food, I have to work out, and I asked like, well, let's slow down, because how does that make you feel? And 100% folks are like, I'm not enjoying any of this. But then comes the other flip side of like, but if I liberated food, I would eat everything in sight. I would eat like candies and cookies and chips all day. And then so we then have a conversation about like, actually, you wouldn't. But in the beginning, you might, because your body's on pleasure deprivation, and bodies don't like that. We wouldn't eat chips and candy and cookies and ice cream all day. We don't want to. We want a variety of foods. But when you're in deprivation, you're going to have a backlash of things. So I've worked with folks like, I'm just eating a lot of these foods. I'm like, give it time. And then the power of those foods will go away because you won't be in a deprived state anymore. And so, I often like share with folks, and you know, been on podcasts that talk about like wholesome and holistic health and fitness and food. And you know, I share one of my favorite stories of that. You know, when I went to Italy in 2018, it was summer and it was a nice day, and every there's a piazza in every city or every neighborhood in Italy, and it's like a town square, and it was evening and everybody was just out, and because it was a warm night and everyone was just out, nobody was on their cell phones, everyone was just talking to each other, and it was chatty, and pretty much everyone had an ice cream, and they were just enjoying themselves. And I said, like that, you know, I didn't hear tension. I didn't even hear so much focus on the ice cream. People wanted more to connect, but they were enjoying their ice cream as well. There was English being spoken and other languages. But you know, and just from all the English that I heard, I didn't hear anyone being like, oh God, I ate that ice cream, I'm going to have to make sure I walk extra. It was just this really enjoyable time. And so I point out to folks that this fear of us overindulging and eating nonstop is just not true. Our bodies will be satisfied.
Absolutely. It sounds like when it comes to values, when it comes to eating, it's all about like what drains you and what energizes you, because weight loss may not be a value, because maybe your weight loss is draining you. Having that voice in your head of, oh my goodness, I've eaten this gelato, I'm going to have to walk for a few kilometers, that's draining. Whereas like the true value may be health. It's, I want to take actions towards my health. Ideally, I'm within and this is in air quotes, healthy BMI range. You know, body mass index is a great indicator for many people, but isn't the best indicator for everyone. I'm bodybuilders, I'm looking at you. And it also sounds like that body liberation can be scary. And I know that you mentioned that when you went through recovery, that food and body liberation just felt amazing to you. And I know you speak on this topic. So tell me more about like what body liberation is and why we should be working towards that.
I believe that body liberation is when you and your body are aligned, and that we live in a society that is supporting that alignment. And that the word health, I really want to use that word, but I feel like our medical system has really kind of polluted it on some level, where it can feel judgy. But yet folks use that word, and I hear them when they're saying, I do want to be healthy. And I'm like, of course you do. Like, we want our bodies to function. We want, like, wherever they can in their abilities, because folks have differing abilities. And so we want our bodies to be optimal in the abilities that they are at. We want access to foods to make choices that feel nourishing, that feel wonderful, that feel connecting. And we want to be able to have activities that are fun and enjoyable. BMI is a tricky tool in that, like, it tells folks where they're at, but it can also not share a whole lot of information. So, like I've had folks share me like, but I'm in an unhealthy BMI range. I'm like, well, we need to look at that, and that like what else is going on in your body? Like, if you are having a great relationship with food and you're getting into movement and you're finding yourself being able to sleep well and you're more flexible than you've been, and all these things, your numbers are great, but you have a high BMI, like, are you really unhealthy? So I don't like it when BMI is used as like, this is the indicator of health. It's like, no, we need to take a step back. I want to hear how you're sleeping. I want to hear how you feel in your body. I want us to use weight in a way of like, let's see what's happening for your body. Like, one of my good friends is a nurse, and she was telling me, like, I want to see, I do want to get people's weights, because if someone has, if someone's weight has increased, she goes, I want to know, because I want to know, like, has there been fluid retention? Has there been other things happening to the body that I need to know of? Not so much to judge someone going, you're not taking care of yourself, but like, why has your body shifted? And so she's like, I want to know these things. So I want to support folks when they're saying, I want to be healthy. And I will ask folks, like, then let's really define health for you. Because I also don't want you to be depressed and anxious and stressed. Those, I don't want those things. That's not healthy. Even if your BMI is in the optimal range, if you're telling me that you're stressed every single day, I'm like, that is not healthy for me.
Hey, Holistic Fitness fam, a quick message from one of our sponsors, NED. As you all know, I recommend good nutrition, movement, and stress management practices before supplementing, so you know what type of supplementation that your body actually needs. For me, I supplement with very few products, but NED is one of them. I'm a type A, high-energy, ambitious business girly with massive goals. And sometimes I honestly just need to chill out and relax a bit. I've found that both NED's de-stress and sleep blends fit in with my busy lifestyle and ambitious goals, but I was honestly not a big fan of CBD products before trying NED, mostly because of the culture surrounding weed. I just didn't want something that was going to alter my state of mind so that I became much less of a goal-getter or less ambitious. That was until I learned about full spectrum hemp and their benefits. NED blends are chock full of premium CBD and a full spectrum hemp of active cannabinoids. NED's full spectrum hemp oil nourishes the body's endocannabinoid system to offer functional support for stress, sleep, inflammation, and balance. These products are science-backed, nature-based solutions that offer an alternative to prescription and over-the-counter drugs. All of NED's full spectrum hemp oil is extracted from USDA certified organic hemp plants grown by an independent farmer named Jonathan in Colorado. I'm obviously a big fan, but don't take just my word for it. NED CBD products have over 2,000 five-star reviews, and they work with incredible partners in the medical field like Dr. Caroline Leaf, Dr. Christian Gonzalez, and Dr. Will Cole. NED is providing Holistic Fitness podcast listeners a very special discount. If you'd like to give NED a try, listeners get 15% off NED products with the code LORILEE, LORILEE. Thanks, NED, for sponsoring the show and offering a natural remedy to bring balance to so many people's well-being.
I'm extremely passionate about sleep and recovery, and I feel like sleep is a huge marker for health. You can be within, quote unquote, healthy body weight ranges. And, there definitely are physical markers for health for sure, but there are a lot of other markers that I feel are discounted within traditional health systems that we are getting a lot more research on, but there's definitely a ways to go in terms of measuring that.
Right.
Yeah. You strike me as the type of person that has a few weight loss myths that grind your gears. Can you tell me, if anything, like in terms of weight loss diet culture grinds your gears and set the record straight for us?
That was true. I want folks to make decisions on food that feel good. And so I know I keep using this like feel good. And I also want folks like work on having a trusting relationship with you and your body and food. And with that, experiment with food. And so folks have shared, like, I notice I have a certain reaction when I eat, X amount of, let's say, sugar or wheat, or saying, I notice I have this reaction when I have dairy. And so I just need to be mindful, or, et cetera. And in particular, as we get older, our bodies change as well. And so I just want for folks to have that kind of curiosity and experimentation and making those decisions of, I want to feel good in my body. What I don't like is when I see various prescribed diets coming in. Yeah, that totally grinds my gears when it's just like I see these like keto and paleo and intermittent fasting and I see these diets and I see the way they're like sensationalized, in the news. I feel and at times I'm looking at the ads and I'm looking at various aspects of it, and it's always about weight loss. And I'm like, okay, that kind of shifts for me, because then you're chasing weight loss again, as opposed to like, sure, experiment, see how it is if you're eating less of this or more of that. We all, I think experimenting with food is really important. And your bodies will adjust to that. I have a hard time when folks are like, well, I didn't stop. I stopped experimenting because I wasn't losing weight. And I'm like, but see, that wasn't really the point. I mean, sometimes your body will lose weight, or sometimes it won't. It's more of like the diet culture that keeps putting weight loss on everything and then ties it up in this like wellness package. I'm like, no, it's still about weight loss, and someone thinking something didn't work because they didn't lose weight. Whereas I'm like, but I love the fact that you were looking to experiment with food. Saying like, okay, this works, this doesn't work. I also don't like hearing when like there's good foods, bad foods. And
yes,
we don't need to moralize food that way.
Yeah, let's not label them.
No. And so that also grinds my gears of like, but if you continue with that, you're going to continue to have this very tormented relationship with food. Because these bad foods, one is like a cookie and an ice cream. Why wouldn't we enjoy that? As opposed to labeling it bad, because then you're not enjoying it, because you're like, I'm not being good, I'm having ice. And it's like, so then are you really enjoying that experience as opposed to ice cream for just what it is, or cookie or chips for what they are, as opposed to that good food, bad food that will completely take over that experience. So no, I don't like the way diet culture comes in and just kind of takes that curiosity and and destroys our abilities to trust and regulate ourselves and be attuned to our bodies. I mean, I will say, like, I'm 52, and there are foods I can't eat anymore, not because they're bad foods, but I'm like, whoa, my body doesn't tolerate those foods anymore.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And the funny thing is my gripe with fitness culture is similar to your gripe with diet culture. My gripe is like taking away the curiosity from movement and then having this prescribed method of how everybody should do movement. Or like spot training, like, oh, do this 30-day booty program and you'll get a booty. And it's like, no, some people will need to eat like 5 meals a day to get a booty. Other people will have one without exercising. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
It's those prescribed programs that take away that sense of curiosity. And hey, I'm a fitness trainer. So if you want to lose weight, I'll help you lose weight. But let's dig into why you want to lose weight. And let's talk about the curiosity of eating different foods, of trying different things and figuring out what works for you rather than, grinding yourself and burning out for a goal that you're probably just wanting to impress other people than that's actually authentically you.
Right.
Yeah. Look, we are coming up to a close and we do have a closing question, Marcella.
Yes.
And that question is, if you were sitting across the table from your 20-year-old self right now, what just one sentence of advice would you give her?
I would say trust the decisions you want to make for yourself.
That is such sweet advice. I mean, a lot of what you spoke about today and folks not knowing what to do with regards to eating disorders, a lot of it is lacking that trust in yourself and needing to build that trust in yourself.
Oh, thank you.
It has been so wonderful to have you. I'm sure many people, especially those that resonate with having disordered eating patterns or just people in general, will want to get to know more about your work. So where can we all find you?
You can find me on social media on Instagram at Dr. Marcella Raimondo. You could follow me there. You can also go to my website at marcellaedtraining.com, and I have a newsletter, so you can also find me there as well.
Awesome. I'm sure that that'll also be in the show notes as well, and I'm sure that many people will want to learn more about you. Thank you so much for joining us today, Marcella.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Lori. This was great.
Yay. And for everybody listening at home, in the car, or wherever you are today, eat well, move well, breathe well, and until next time, keep shining.